I am Cris von Erik. Come on, Franklin. Oh, that's hot. Are you serious? If you walk around looking like that, you deserve it. I am your humble Messiah. You are my disciples. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Cris von Erik Show. I am your humble Messiah. You are my disciples. As always, I'm here with my co-host, Franklin. Franklin, how are you tonight?
I'm doing all right, Cris. Good to have you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And this is a watershed moment in the history of, well, the short-lived history of this program. We have the venerable author of the Rational Male series, Mr. Rollo Tomassi. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Doing well. Basically, what I brought you on tonight about is a little thing that I was thinking about actually all this week. In my regular job, I deal with a lot of guys that they're either getting married or they've been married for quite some time, and they give me a lot of the general stuff that I've heard through a lot of the other podcasts that you're on and with some of the other guys, and it's about, I married my high school sweetheart, or we met in college, and we did the thing, and we had our 2 or 3 kids, and even though I'm kind of unhappy and I don't have exactly everything I wanted, it's good enough. And then if there are problems, I hear the old adage, cheaper to keep her. Mm-hmm. So what I wanted to ask you first is that a form of like either guarding themselves, or does it go back to that one-itis that you talk about in a lot of your stuff on the Rational Male?
I think that when you have when you've got a guy who has his high school sweetheart, or he married young, I think you go through a certain maturity process. I think, like, if you're marrying like straight out of high school, and I know a few people still do that. That's very rare, actually, I should say. But like a lot of guys still hang on to that blue pill idealism when they get married at such an early age. They retain what I call an adolescent social skill set, and there is a degree of maturity. There's a process or of experience that sort of brings you out of that way of dealing with people socially and interpersonally as an adolescent, and then dealing with people, like, say, when you're 22, when you're 26, when you're 32, when you're 39, when you're 44, those kinds of things. And I'm not saying those are specific ages. I'm just saying that when you sort of travel between, say, 19 years old or 18, whenever you get out of high school, to the point where you're, let's just say, 30 years old, there's a lot of maturing that goes along there. And it's this social understanding. And not just with like other guys, but with women as well. And I think that when you are 18, and I wrote about this in the second book, there is a part of you that is various for men, particularly. Men are innately idealistic. And so when you're fed on that blue pill conditioning and that Disney magic and it doesn't even have to be Disney, it's just this romantic ideal where you're taught that there's a soulmate, or you're taught that there's like the girl that you meet in high school. Boy, wouldn't it be a romantic story to meet your girlfriend at like 16 at the high school dance, and you meet each other and you just knew she was the one from gazing across the room at her, and that kind of stuff. And I think that particularly guys who are sold into this idea of like female idealizations, that they cling to that, and then when they get married at that early age, they are insulated, I think, to a degree, from the experiences that they would need to have when throughout their 20s. And then maybe even throughout their 30s. So they find themselves at about 36 or 37 years old, and that's when they finally realize that they're actually hitting their sexual market value peak, or their peak potential as a guy. And they realize that they didn't know anything about anything when they were 19 years old. And so then you start thinking about my life that could have been. I could have done these things. If had I not fell in love with this person, had I not, believed in this sort of teenage adolescent idealism, I guess, is it, then my life could have been different. I could have changed things up. And so when people do that, they tend to look for rationales to either to feel good. I mean, you want to insulate your ego from stuff like that when you think about my life that could have been. And it's not so much a regret as it is just sort of pragmatically looking back over your life and going, what are the opportunities that I could have had if I had not gotten married at 19? I could have gone to college. I could have gone to here. I could have done this. I could have joined the military. I could have, been in a successful rock band. I could have been whatever, there's all these, and it's not even so much whether or not you could have actually done such things. It's the opportunity and the potential. And I think there's particularly guys are more interested in things. Women tend to be more interested in people. And as such, because we are idealistic, we tend to want to believe in what could be, what might have been. And so
it's funny you said that, because one of the guys at my job said exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They said, I was on the line to get a job, and then I didn't wait. I didn't wait for that job, and I went and I met my wife. That was it.
I remember when, and anybody knows anything about my personal history, like right smack dab in the middle of my 20s is when I decided to get involved with a woman who was certifiably clinically had BPD, borderline personality disorder. I didn't know what it was at the time because I was not even in school at that time. I decided, it's interesting, is I decided that I wanted to experience things in life. I wanted to experience women. I wanted to experience, being an artist, being a musician, being whatever, and I wasn't really concerned with building my castle, so to speak. I was more concerned with being, I was in my 20s and I wanted to experience things. And then I got locked down with this woman, right around 24 years old. And if I have, I hate to think of this in terms of regret, because I don't really have any regrets in life, because I am who I am and I wrote what I wrote and I've done what I've done as Rollo Tomassi because of those experiences. So I can't say I regret them, but I look back at that period of my life, that 4-year period of my life, and I go, there was a lot of wasted potential right there. I mean, there was so much that I became somebody else. But because I believed in that bullshit, because I believed in the blue pill stuff, I believed in the one-itis, and I thought my ship had come in, man. I thought, oh man, this is great. She loves to have sex. She's blonde. She's skinny. She's everything I want. We have porn star sex all the time. It's great, but crazy in bed and crazy out of bed. And I didn't know that. I was completely unprepared for anything like that. But when I look back on that I understand that experience taught me a lot. And unfortunately, it took a long time for me to figure the damn thing out. But, and I had to figure myself out because of that. So looking back on that, I go, okay, that, where I'm at today, I'm glad that happened. But at the time, I sure as hell wasn't glad about that it was happening, because it sucked. But when I look back on that period of my life, I go, oh, that was a lot of wasted potential. What could I have done with those 4 years? And I think that's really now that's just 4 years of my life. Now imagine you're, 40 years old and you're looking back on the last, say, 15
20
years or 20 years. I have a guy that I counsel, who's in his 70s, who was sort of became red pill aware right when he was about 69, 70 years old by reading my stuff. And looking back at the decisions that he made over the last 50 some odd years, and knowing, why he made the decisions he did, and knowing the role that he played in, seeing the code in the matrix, so to speak, right? And seeing all the stuff that had happened, and now he realizes why he made those decisions. That's really tough to hit somebody in the face with. And to his credit, at least he is accepting of that. Most people aren't. So when you talk to a guy like the guy you're talking about, when he goes, I got married really young and I wonder what my life could have been had I not done all those things. That's a guy telling you that. When women say the same thing, they're usually looking back fondly on their party years, or they're widowed from an alpha. You know, when I talk about alpha widows and stuff, they do the same thing too. So for women, it's more like making up for missing out. That's when women decide that they're going to divorce their husband of, you know, X amount of years and follow the divorce porn fantasy, which is eat, pray, love, right? You know, fly up to Jamaica, find a new lover and live happily ever after, right? And so and that's a real easy sell for women because they process that decision making through their emotional filters, whereas guys are a little bit more rational about it. And that's really tough because guys will look back, like I said, like even I'm doing it right now. Actually, I'm looking back on that time of my life from a rational perspective, from a pragmatic perspective, like what could I have done with those, rather than going, oh, remember those days when I had, you know, I had all that in my 20s and or when I was so crazy in my college years.
See, the difference between Rollo and myself is I look back on all those and say, my God, thank God she left.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, thank God it's over kind of thing. Right. Yeah. And I it taught me a lot. At least I can speak to that. At least when guys tell me about like being locked into their girlfriends or their one-itis or whatever, at least I can speak from experience. That's another thing is like when I was in my high school days, I wasn't always like, you know, the lesser alpha guy. I was very much a blue pill beta in my high school days. I knew what I wanted to do. I just couldn't figure out how to do it. And then I got a girlfriend that lasted for a couple of years. First girl I ever had sex with. She cheated on me. We broke up. But like while it was going, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. With the same fantasy, right? I met her in high school. We're gonna get married. She's the one, you know. She's the only girl for me, and it's like the only girl I've ever had sex with, right? And so I'm thinking in those terms. And so as a blue pill kid, you know, I don't know any different. I decided I wanted to move off to the same college town she was in because I thought I would facilitate the relationship. And of course, she cheated on me. Blah blah blah. And then at that point, I kind of turned into sort of the alpha rock star guy, right? I wanted to get laid and I wanted to figure out how to do that. So I became a whole lot more alpha.
You mean this guy from this picture?
Yeah. Like don't give a fuck alpha. That's the guy. Yeah. And,
that guy right here.
Which one? Oh yeah. Yeah, you guys have been hunting, man. You guys have been hunting for me.
It's like Jay Leno, you know. You come on. And,
well, the guy, you know, so is I think I popped off with these pictures on.
No, you did
on Masculine Geek.
I would never like just throw some crazy stuff on.
Nah, it's fine. No, but yeah, I mean, in those days, that's actually a more recent picture than I'm talking in my 20s. I think it was in my 30s when I was doing that one. Yeah, I mean, so like I've experienced a lot of different things. I've been very over the top alpha. I've been very like almost bottom of the barrel, like omega when I was with, if you follow the, you know, I'm just using those as sort of abstract terms, but you know, to get to where I am today. And at least I know that I can talk about those things, which is great. But like for guys like that, if I would say is you can't dwell. I always tell you can't dwell in the past, right? Mm-hmm. Well, you don't want to do that, first of all, because what you need to do is the only way you can go is forward. Mm-hmm. So with that knowledge, with the knowledge of how are you going to live your life with the knowledge that you have now, and this is what gets me is a lot of people will say, well, those red pill guys, they're just like turning guys off to long-term relationships and love and all this other stuff. And they're killing your artistic, idealistic souls and stuff. And I was like, no, but what you have to be is you have to be aware. You don't have, like when you become red pill aware, you don't have the excuses anymore. You don't have, I didn't know any better. I didn't know she was like that. Okay, fine. Now you know better. What are you going to do going forward? How are you going to live life better going forward? Are you going to break up with your girlfriend? Are you going to break up with your wife? Are you going to do whatever, you know, maybe that's in the cards. Maybe that's not in the cards. If it's not in the cards, how are you going to change your marriage then? How are you going to change the way that you live? So you can only go forward. And so you take what you have and you take what you've learned and then you apply that and make the best decisions that you can going forward.
Yeah. And that is the case. And it's funny because you touched on it before about that big tenement in one of your, you have your iron rules, mm-hmm. and number 6 plays into that a little bit where you say that men and women are incapable of loving the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that might be the crux of the matter when you come to these situations where these older guys realize that, it's just not adding up. Well,
Mm-hmm.
what he thought love was going to be like through the ages, that's not what she had in her mind the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was actually, I've got this little thing here of topics I'm going to be doing some like standalone videos of, and that's one of them.
You stole my idea.
Well, now that I said that, I'm sure that son of a
Actually,
bitch from 33 Secrets is going to go, oh, I think I'll do the difference between love.
Oh, it's funny. I think everybody's doing them.
Everybody lifts my shit right now, and you know what? And I've said this in the past, is like, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with people, like, because I want people to spread the message. I want them to talk about these things. I want to have this discussion. I've always said that. But there's a difference between, like, saying, oh, Rollo Tomassi said something like this, and claiming that it's your, reading from the rational male going, I came up with this great idea today. It is called hypergamy. Yeah. Yeah. And so they start reading that stuff. No, but I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't really get a chance to talk about the differences between love all that much. A lot of people, I think this is probably one of the more difficult concepts in my books, particularly for guys who are freshly unplugged, because they think that it sort of leads to nihilism or depression or like despondency or whatever. And I don't think that it has to. I came to terms with it, and I'm still very much in a loving relationship, and I love my wife to death. I always will, as far as I'm concerned. But I understand that the way she loves me is not the way that I love her. And that doesn't mean that you can't have a mutual love together. It just means that your concept of love is different than the concept of the woman that you're with, or women in general. Because we, as a gendered difference between men and women, is how we approach intimacy and how we approach love and how we allow ourselves to love certain people. There's this big romantic bullshit idea that you can't help with that, who you fall in love with. I just fell in love with them. And it's like, no, there's a process, and there's actually quite a predictable process behind why people develop emotional attachments with other people. When it comes to, like we were talking about before, when it comes to men tend to be more idealistic. We want to believe that love exists for the sake of love. We don't approach it in the same manner that women do. Women approach love from an opportunistic perspective. And whenever I say that, women lose their minds, and they say, oh, he says that women are opportunistic. And it's like, well, they are opportunistic because they have to be opportunistic. And there's nothing wrong with being opportunistic either. Yes, there's some bad things that happen from women being opportunistic, particularly when it comes to their mating strategies. And when we talk about the H word, hypergamy. But when we talk about those things, we have to understand that women will allow themselves to fall in love with guys, but those men have to jump through a lot of hypergamous hoops, right? Hypergamous filters. They have to qualify in some way. And it doesn't mean you have to check off all the boxes or you're doomed to, have your genetic legacy die out. It just means that you have to, at least in some way, and even if it's fake, even if you fake these, even if you just provide the perception that you're passing these tests or you're checking off these boxes, sometimes that's all that's necessary for a woman to become intimate and to invest herself emotionally in you. So women are naturally hypergamous, and so they apply the opportunism that is inherent in hypergamy to the guys that they will allow themselves to fall in love with. So when I say, well, the only I get into arguments all the time with women. They'll say like, oh, I fell in love with this guy and he's an unemployed loser, blah, blah, blah. I go, yeah, but there's something about him that he checked off some boxes, even if just perceptually he checked off some boxes for you to actually consider becoming in any way intimate with the guy. Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh yeah, he's unemployed and everything, but he's ripped and looks like Chris Hemsworth. Oh, well, there are certain prerequisites that women have for investing themselves in an emotional relationship. For men, we want to believe what was the, there's a quote that I had, and I think it was from Women in Love, and it's men are romantics pretending to be realists, and women are realists pretending to be romantics. And it's men who are actually the real romantics. It's not women. When we think of romance, we think women will always say, oh, it'd be so romantic to do this and this and this and this. And that's not how romance works. Romance works because romance is spontaneous, and romance is like when you have a romantic like experience with a woman, it's when you are not planning that. Romance isn't a process of contriving a date night or doing some sort of romantic gesture. That's kind of, you know, when you do something like that and a woman figures out what you're trying to do, she feels obligated. Oh, that's sweet, thank you. You know, she feels obligated to that. Whereas if you are dirt poor and you make her a ring out of a gum wrapper and you put that ring on her and you're just joking around and she's like, oh, it's so sweet, and she keeps the gum wrapper ring in her jewelry box till she's 89 years old. That's what I'm talking about. That's the real, but those are kinds of things that guys will do because we're a little bit more, we're idealists, but we're pragmatic idealists. We want to believe in what could be. And so we think, because of that, we think in terms of love for the sake of love. We don't have to, like, men have a very low threshold of qualifications for women, right? So, you know,
what have you heard about me?
Show up naked and bring beer, you know, that's the prerequisites, right? No, but I mean, so we don't have those, we don't have the same expectations, we don't have the same kind of opportunism, because men have a burden of performance. So we know what we have to do to qualify. So we're interested in what can be and how well we perform. Like we were just saying before, when you get to a certain age and you're looking back and you're thinking about the life that could have been, men are looking at that from a pragmatic standpoint. What could I have done with those years? What could I have built? What could I have, where could I have flown? Those things. And so as a result of that idealism, that's how we process our concept of love. We think that women should love us in exactly the same way. And we're told that all the time, because when we talk about love, we think that it's a mutual thing between men and women. We think that women have the same concept of love that we do, and we don't. We get to love in different ways. Men get to men have sex with a woman and it's fun and it's going good and everything else, and then maybe we fall in love with a woman and we don't have, like I said, those attraction floors like women have attraction floors because of hypergamy.
Well, I always thought it was flip-flopped. I always thought men get close and feel closer, after being intimate, whereas women have to get close to be intimate.
Yeah, and that's kind. I mean, when we're talking about sexuality, that's old school. That's like old social contract. That's like the way we used to think about things. Like now, because we have Tinder and because we can monitor women's behavior a whole lot. I mean, at an unprecedented rate right now. We can see in numbers, black and white, empirical evidence, statistics of what women want, what they do, and not just like what they say they want, what they're doing, what they're the choices and the decisions that they're making. And so like when I wrote about open hypergamy, and what I mean by that is like this idea that women are open about their mating strategy, which is the Sandbergian plan of hypergamy, which is have fun with the bad boys and the commitment phobic boys and the hot guy and the foam cannon party on spring break, those guys. And then when you get to be 29 to 31 years old, cash out of the casino before it's too late, and find a guy who is your equal, which is just a subversive way, I guess, of saying you're a beta. Find a beta in waiting, a guy who's still ignorant of how the game is played, and then live happily ever after with that guy, and then convince yourself that nothing else is sexier. And so,
are you trying to say it's not 50-50?
No. Well, I mean, I think that's now that we know better. That's like the 90s. If you look at the 90s and you look at what was popular in the 90s, and if you go back and you watch like Friends or you watch Seinfeld or you watch anything that was in popular culture during the 90s, I always say that the 90s was was the apex moment for feminism and for women in general, because there was no internet. And if you wanted, there was no game, there was no pickup artist community, there was nothing. Like, we couldn't compare notes because the internet wasn't as widespread. We didn't have forums, we didn't have Twitter, we couldn't watch women's behavior on Tinder, oh, swipe, swipe, swipe. We couldn't, it was all still a secret. But then now that with the rise of the communication era and technology and everything else, now men can get. I think it's interesting that one of the first things that guys did when the internet became a thing, like a global, worldwide thing, was they got together and they compared notes about how to get women. How to, that's why the pickup artist community got started. It was to sort of compare notes with guys all over the world and decide what was working and what wasn't. And that was sort of the tip of the iceberg. And people think that it's just a fad, or it's just some sort of some moment in time on the internet for guys. It's like, no, that was a watershed moment. That was a point, like when we started having like even just regular forums like So Suave or All Fast Seduction and RSD for a while there, and all the stuff that they talked about in the game, and Neil Strauss wrote it in the game. Remember, all that stuff happened 2001, 2002, 2003. I mean, the book was published in 2005. So that was a long time ago. I mean, we'll be in 2020 here in just a few short months. And that right there, when you look at that, I almost look at that as ancient history right now. But when people like talk about pickup artists, that's what they think of. They think of like fuzzy hats and black nail polish, and, elevator boots, and that was fun because guys were throwing spaghetti against the wall and they wanted to see what worked, and that was part of the process.
But you know what? Like, it's funny you said that, because I listened to Richard's show with Dr. Smith before the train wreck all the time, and I noticed the guys that are calling in, these young guys, they're asking those same questions.
It's all the same guy. It's all the same guy. They all have the same problem. They all want to call. One of the things that, and I like going on Rich's show when he has me fill in, but and this isn't just unique to his show. It's like I get a lot of the same stuff from the guys that I counsel, or the guys who are asking me questions and in my DMs or something. And 90% of these guys know exactly what I'm going to say. They just want to hear me say it. They want me to give them permission. Yep. They want me to say, I've really got this great girl, but I know what you said about getting married and da 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 da. Or else how do I get my girlfriend back? Or should I get my girlfriend back? Or I have a baby with this woman, and we're not married, but how can I be more alpha? Or I lost the frame. How do I get back the frame? And 9 times out of 10, they already know what it is. They already know what I'm going to say, but they need to hear it, and they need to have it like spelled out. No punches pulled.
I wish they would call me. I take their $20 like Aaron Cleary does, and be like, no. Leave.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they know what I'm going to say. And I think a lot of guys, I think the most common questions I get is, how do I get my girlfriend back? Or my girlfriend left me for a guy who's an alpha. Am I really that beta? Am I really that? Or they'll ask me like, I did X, Y, and Z. Was that alpha? Was that beta? And I'm like, and then, guys will say, a very common question from the guys who are older, who become awakened while married. They ask me the same thing. They will say, how do I get my wife to have sex with me? How do I recapture the frame? How do I, assuming you even had the frame, right? And how do I reconstruct my marriage? I don't want to leave my wife. I have a kid. Maybe even if they don't have a kid, they're still very much in love and they still want to see it work. Most guys, when they're cheating on their wives, or they're contemplating leaving their wives or something, they don't want to do it. Unless she's like this abhorrent bitch, they like, what was it? Like prostitutes will tell you, like professional, prostitutes will tell you that most guys, when they come there, they don't want to leave their wives. They just want to get laid. They just want to have that attention and that appreciation and that, affection that they're not getting at home. They don't want a divorce. They want to stay with their wives. So they're asking me questions like, how do I will tell them, you need to break up with your wife, but not like actually break up, but just sort of break up here with her. And then you have to decide that once you've broken up with her and you're starting to live your life a little bit different, and you're making decisions for yourself and you're making yourself your mental point of origin. What is that woman? If you met that woman today in a club or something, would you want to pair up with her, knowing what you know about her and knowing what you're the direction you want to go? Most guys will say no, but they still want to stick it out with her because, again, guys have that romantic soul. They want what works.
Well, I heard a lot too that a lot of them said that, well, she wasn't like that before.
Mm-hmm.
When we met,
she turned on me. Yeah.
Right.
Our mutual friend.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You tell them, oh, would you meet her again, 20 years before?
Mm-hmm.
They'd say, yeah, because she wasn't the same and she looked better.
Mm-hmm. So. Well, I got married. I got married after about a year of dating my wife. About 6 months of that year, I was non-exclusive. I was with other chicks, and she could go off and be with other dudes. And she was the one who hit me up and said, I don't like the idea of you with other women. I want to be exclusive. And she asked me to be exclusive with her. And so that right there, and like, I didn't know, I wasn't like Rollo Tomassi then. I wasn't like, super red pilled or anything, but that hit me, that struck me as, here's a woman who's made a conscious choice. Like, I didn't say, oh, please be my girlfriend. I didn't say stuff like that. She came to me and she asked me, and she made the initiative, and she was the one that said that she wanted to be exclusive, especially after we had been dating. I would go like 4 or 5 days without even talking to her, and she's Thursday or Friday would roll around and say, hey, you want to get together? Sure, we would. And we were seeing other people at the same time, but then after that, we were exclusive, and we've been exclusive ever since. But those, I don't think a lot of guys, remember we were talking about the maturation process. I don't think the majority of guys ever really experience that. They go with whatever works. They go with, they convince themselves, the blue pill helps a lot with this, but they convince themselves, and their conditioning convinces them, that the only legitimate way to be with a woman is to always be exclusive with her and never spin plates, never have more than one woman at a time. Preferably you just stay with that one person. And they couldn't even tell you why they feel that way. They couldn't tell you why they came to that conclusion. I can go and dig it out. I can go stage by stage from the time they were 5 years old as to why they believe that, but they that seems like what works. And so when I have guys that tell me, oh yeah, the girl I'm seeing right now is 43 and I'm 27, right? I'm like, why would you do that? Well, I have a preference for older women. No, you're just doing what works. It's easier to get laid with a 43-year-old single mommy than it is to, get after it with girls that of your own age or younger than you. It's easier. Men tend to opt for the path of least resistance. So when guys tell me, oh yeah, I like a girl who's got a little extra weight on her, fat or what, and like, no, the fat girl that you had sex with was really easy to get into bed. And so that's what you go with. Your fetish comes from whatever it is that was most productive for you in the past. And so the reason I'm saying that is because that men using what works or going with what works defines who they are in the long term. So most guys wouldn't dream of spinning plates. They wouldn't dream of being non-exclusive. And so when they finally get to that point and you go and they become red pill aware and they unplug and maybe they're single and they start spinning plates and they start living their lives in a different way, first of all, it feels foreign to them, but then they see how productive it is and what, and they're enjoying what they're doing. And they're keeping women at arm's distance, but not being like emotionally unavailable or anything. I mean, they're just spinning plates. They're dating non-exclusively. That's dating as an adult.
Right.
That was one thing that got me too, is like when I was in my early 20s, I spun plates and I didn't even know the concept at that time. I was just like, to me, it was like, I'm going to be non-exclusive. I want some of that and that and that and that. And I would go and I would say, this is what I want to experience. And I finally got to a point where I could reliably do that. I had at one point, I had 4 friends with benefits. So I gone through that. I dated a few strippers. I dated a black girl, a Korean girl, a Vietnamese girl, and then, blonde, brunette, whatever, and I was just like, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do.
Franklin, I have a lot of work
see how it goes. Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't, and don't feel like that, it's nice to be able to sample. Like I remember, God, I'd say that I know that you watch like all of my Rule Zero stuff, and you've been sort of, I guess, a fan for a while with my podcast. So you probably know what my notch count is, which is 40 plus, but under 45, somewhere around there. And the reason I always say that, I would, if I had to put a number, I would say 43, but like, I'm going to say 43, and then I'm going to start counting, and I'll go, oh yeah, then there was that other time, and then it'll be 44, or it'll be 41. So when I was thinking about that, and I was talking about my notch count, when I talk about my notch count with like Pat Campbell, I feel like a man whore, right? I mean, I just feel like
I feel the same way with him. It's
and it's like then if I talk to like Christian McQueen, who's in the triple digits, I feel like, is this guy going to take me seriously? Because I will, and I've been having sex with the same woman for last 24 years. Is he going to take me seriously? So it's kind of, I kind of get it from both sides.
Like, you've been wasting time, 20 years. My God, man.
Well, and then a lot of, since we're playing really casual today, a lot of what I understand about women and intersexual dynamics comes from, from my personal experience, comes from 2 areas. And the first one was when I was living in Hollywood, and this was back in the late 80s and early 90s. And then my experience with my daughter and my wife, and that kind of, understanding, sort of the internal nature of women, obviously studying this kind of stuff as well, but then also my line of work, which puts me in the field a lot. And so when I'm at a promotional gig, or when I've got my Poor Girls or something like that, I'm picking up to me. And I it's funny because like before I didn't realize I was doing it.
Liquor stuff or whatever it is.
Yeah, I do promotional stuff for liquor brands right now, for wine and spirits, and I've been doing that for 14 years now, something like that. Prior to that, I've worked. I think I said something like this not too long ago. I've been the art director for several casinos. One major company that is one of the biggest producers of video gaming devices, like video poker and slot machines and stuff like that. And I have been the art director and I'm just saying art director loosely here because titles might change or whatever, but basically the principal creative at these places, and at Import Export Company that is no longer in existence, but it was when I was there from 2005 till about 2014. And that's where a lot of once that sort of broke up, once that company divested, that's when I got into ownership stakes of a couple of brands I still do work for. Those are kind of like my babies. And then from there, I took all my contacts, and I guess I went freelance, but then I sort of on again, off again work for distribution, and I work for casinos as well. And so right now, I'm set up so that if people want to use me, they just call me up and they use me. Or if if there's a gig somewhere, anywhere in like say Northern Nevada, Northern California, sometimes Southern California, but I would rather not go that far. Vegas is another. That's one of the reasons I'm in Reno, because I do stuff in Vegas as well. And as such, because I'm involved in nightlife, I guess, being at bringing up promos, being at a martini fest, that kind of stuff, I'm there sort of taking mental notes and watching people's interactions. And as you know, my psychology background is in behavioral psychology, so I'm watching these things going on. And when I first start, like prior to me writing and I first got into this kind of stuff, I did this kind of naturally just because I kind of liked it. I mean, I wasn't going to go home with any of these chicks, but once I started learning game and I became more red pill aware, and I started writing and I started getting involved in the social web forums, I was taking what I saw at these events and sort of doing my own field reports and coming back and saying, okay, here's what I saw. Here's what worked for this guy. This dude was, and basically watching this behavior and knowing, being around beautiful people all the time and seeing what it is they were doing. So I was kind of like, I'm kind of like the Diane Fossey or the Jane Goodall of the red pill, I guess, because I go out there into the field and I'm just sort of taking notes and living amongst them, and a lot of it comes from personal
poor girls back,
yeah. Well, when I was in college, I did a lot of peer counseling, and I did it with older guys, with older men, which was really kind of tragic in and of itself. But it sort of made me realize the need and the necessity for all this stuff. And when guys get to be like 60 some odd years old and they're looking back, just like we've been talking about, what do you tell a guy like that? What do you tell a guy who says, if my wife would just tell me what she wanted, I would do it. And just so we could have sex, or just so we could live happily ever after. What do I have to buy her? What do I have to say? What do I have to, and you're talking to a guy who's like, when I was in there, I was in my mid 30s, and I'm talking to guys 65 years old who are looking to me for advice. And I'm like, you're the one supposed to be all wise and everything. And I've found that those guys tend to be the least wise of all, because of generation after generation of conditioning men for the blue pill. Yeah. They still believe in the soulmate myth at 65 years old. They still believe in I was just, I had a tweet. I put it in my latest post. This guy was talking about, I should just go read it for you. This guy was talking about how through the ages, he, what was it? I'll just read it to you here. It was, here it is. This guy, David Feldman, and I know him because he's sort of like the red pill Christian bloc kind of thing. These guys are, the evangelical dudes. And so the dude says this, he says, wisdom I heard. In my 20s, I fought with my wife till the bitter end. In my 40s, I learned to just apologize afterwards. Now in my 60s, every morning, I just start my day with, honey, I'm so sorry for being wrong today. It took 40 plus years, but I'm happy at last. And it's like all the, laughing and stuff. And they don't even realize how tragic that is, or how pathetic that is. Because when I see somebody who's 60, 65 years old and they're still like coming out with these blue pill tropes and laughing at it and convinced, and other guys are like, oh yeah, women, I guess we'll never understand them. To me, it's tragic.
I work with these people.
Mm-hmm.
I literally do.
Yeah. And they, I had a, I was in a band one time, and the guy who was my guitar tech, he was one of the roadies that we had. He was exactly one of these guys that you're talking about, a Christian, born again Christian guy. Right. And he knew that, I had a lot of girlfriends, and he was telling me at one point, he was telling me how he wondered what it would be like to have sex with someone other than his wife, and how that nagged at him and it ate away at him, that he didn't like, he's only ever known sex from a transactional nature. He's only ever known sex with his wife. And some people will say, well, that's great. That's sweet. That's the way it should be. It's like, yeah, okay. You could even make a case for that, but the doubt is there, the nagging is there, my life that could have been is there. And so they're thinking back on this all the time, and it's tough, man. I think it's really even tougher for guys who have a religious bent to them as well. Like I really, I mean, I'm not talking run of the mill. I'm saying, like these guys, they what was it? I was talking to Pat about this, about how Christian men, like 89% of Christian men admit to having like a sex addiction. And it's like all they're doing is just stroking it to porn. It's not like they're going out and like, seeing a new prostitute every night.
Yeah.
And why? So then you have to ask yourself, why is pornography so popular amongst that demographic of Christian? Well, the obvious answer is they are not allowed to have sex outside of their marriage, and they wonder what it would be like to have sex outside of it. How are other people getting it? Yeah, if they're getting it at all. What was it? Statistically, I think it's like 28 or 30% of people in the United States, marriages in the United States, are technically sexless marriages.
That's insane. That's
a pretty high number.
Yeah, I should probably quote that just so I'm 100% thorough here.
Yeah, I don't want an influx of email of, hey.
Yeah. I have a folder full of like data for like red pill data, and it is.
I don't dig the 16-year-old waking up in the morning and the first thing out of his mouth is apologizing for something.
Yeah, exactly. And the haha, that's fun. And you know what? I get it. They probably think that's just a joke or that's funny or something. But why is it a joke? Why do people smile at it? Because they're familiar with it. It's a familiarity. Here it is. I'm sorry. It's 15 to 20% of marriages are sexless marriages. 20 to 30% of men say they have little to no sex drive. 30 to 50% of women say they have little to no sex drive.
And I know a guy, somebody at my job, he literally jokes about that. Like, I can't even tell you the last time,
Yeah. And that's their normal operating temperature, right? That's just the way that's the way they live their lives, because anything can become normal. That's true. Here. Okay. So I got here's another one. This is 20% of married people haven't had sex in the past year. Having sex less than 10 times per year meets the definition of a sexless marriage. And so, like, is it any wonder that Christian guys are addicted to pornography? Is it any wonder that I've got 60 some odd year old guys coming up to me and saying, how do I fix my marriage? I can't get her to spread her legs for me like she used to. Or guys who will, and what gets me is, I'll have guys like that who will ask me, how do I do this? How do I up the alpha? How do I save my marriage? And, because they really genuinely feel, love and affection for their wives. And then I'll have the other side who will just, the same, and then the same breath in the next sentence, they'll be like, well, I can't believe you advocate for guys to go out and have, spin plates or have more sex. Like, look at, I got one side here that's saying that they can't get laid with their wives, and I got the other side here who thinks like I'm the devil for saying that sexual variety might be something that's okay for a little while. Yeah, that's tough.
Just hope I don't turn out to be that guy at 60.
Well, yeah, I mean, you gotta like the guys that I deal with who are like 65 and 70 years old, I've only got like, I think 3 or 4 of these guys. Some other guys, like the other demographic I deal with a lot is the 45 to 55 demo.
That's interesting.
And that is, most of those guys are hitting me up because they're divorced. And most of them, with the exception of like one guy that I have right now, they were the divorced. They're the ones that the wives initiated the divorce and decided that they wanted to cash out of the relationship now that either the kids were almost gone to college or there was a bigger and better deal for them. One guy, my good friend Mike, he initiated his divorce and he has never been happier. and is, getting, but he's sort of a rare case because he's in really good shape, and he jumped in with both feet. He's got a naturally kind of like outgoing alpha personality, but him getting back into the sexual marketplace in 2018, well, it was 2018 then, was a challenge because he'd been married for like 26 years, and getting back into it. I think the prime demographic for male suicide right now is 45 to 55 years old.
That same group.
And why are they doing that? Exactly. I've written about this on several essays. The latest one, which was actually I think over a year ago now, was Zeroed Out, and I wrote that after the what was it? Anthony Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain and his suicide, and why people were just dumbfounded. Like, why would a guy who's had that, he had everything, he was, granted he's in 68, and look who he's dating, and you look at the choices that the guy's made, and maybe he was kind of alpha, like in his outward world, I guess. But when you look at him from the perspective of intersexual dynamics, like who are the women that he's getting with, he tends to overinvest, very much a suicide or a casualty of his own belief in love, right? When we're talking about how men love idealistically. Well, and the thing about men being idealistic is in some ways it's very, very good. Like we build monuments, we paint masterpieces, we fucking fly to the moon, right? Because we're like, why are we going to go to the moon? What's up? I don't care. I'm going. Let's get in. We're going. And so that idealism can be very, very healthy because human beings by nature are discontent. We if we're ever content, it's only for a very short time, and then we move on to the next thing because we want to see. Okay, well, I went to the moon. Can we go to Mars? And so there's that. That's the good side of idealism in men. The bad side is like the Anthony Bourdain side, where you idealize and you just vest yourself in. If it's like guys will tell me this all the time. Like when I talk to them about the differences between men and women and how our concepts of love differ, there's the guys who are so vested in their definition, their idealistic definition of love, that they are willing to go MGTOW because they don't think women can love. They don't think that women, and that's the biggest misquote of me with respect to that topic or that iron rule, is they think that the quote is that women fundamentally lack the capacity to love. That's what they think, because they think the only legitimate way to love is according to their concept. And they can't believe that, or if a woman rejects them and I say, well, look, she's approaching from an opportunistic perspective. They think that means that women in general cannot love because they can't love the way that a man can, because that's the real quote. That's the real iron rule, which is women fundamentally lack the capacity to love a man in the way that he believes that she should be able to love him. That's the full quote. Most men will say, "Oh, they just can't love." They can't love because they're so invested in that blue pill, one-itis soulmate ideal of love that they can't think of it in any other terms. So if a woman can't do that, then they can't be real. They can't really love me. And it's like I've written probably 7 different essays trying to explain this to guys, saying like it is entirely possible and historically possible for men and women to meet each other and fall in love and have a lifetime marriage. It is entirely possible for that. Be glad that's the case, because it's what has been that kind of monogamy, or that kind of at least strived for socially enforced monogamy, has been what has advanced social, Western culture for a very long time. Be glad that it is.
If it wasn't for
and
that.
be glad that it's true. And I have, this is I again, I get it from both sides. So when I say that, the MGTOW side, the guys who are very sort of despondent and pessimistic or nihilistic about how women can never love you. Those are the guys who I have to say, no, it's entirely possible for, for men and women to love each other. And let me explain to you why. Well, then on the other side, I've got people going, oh, Rollo Tomassi, he said that men and women can't love each other. I can't believe he's not trying to, to get, to foment healthy, loving relationships. And it's like, no, I'm just saying be aware of these truths, be aware of this reality so that you don't Anthony Bourdain yourself, so that you don't overcommit, so you don't believe in this nihilistic, despondent variety of what you think the red pill is all about. And so it's like finding that balance is really hard, because I think in the manosphere, everybody, critics from both sides tend to lean very hard towards whatever their pet belief is. And so there's no really objective understanding. It's all subjective. And so it's either it's hot or cold, right? It's binary. It's they can love you or they can't love you. They don't. And so when you mix that in to being zeroed out, to investing yourself in something for a very long time, for you to hope against hope that love can finally win the day. Love wins, right? You don't tell Anthony Bourdain love wins, okay? Because he's already there. He already believes that. It's when he understands the true nature of women, and it is contradictory to the way that he has envisioned this idealistic ideal of what women should be able to do. Like I was saying before, the MGTOWs who don't believe that women can love because they don't love the way that they do. It's the same thing for these guys who are getting zeroed out and killing themselves, because maybe they're married and their wife and the girl that they met, right, when they were 19 years old, the one that is their soulmate, that they invested all of this time and love in their lives, and they completely rearranged their life that could have been. They have all of that invested into that, and then the wife says, sorry, I'm leaving you. You're boring. I'm done with this. I need to get out. You're stifling me. I'm in love with you, but I'm not in love with you. Those kinds of things. And so then once those guys, because those guys are so invested in that idealistic form of love and invested in the fairy tale romantic soulmatey crap, that's when they put a noose around their necks. And I've seen men with noose around their necks. And that's one of the reasons I got into this. It's one of the reasons I started writing, was because my brother-in-law had killing himself. But why did he do that? What was the underlying reason for that? Because his idealism was overinvested in the fantasy, in the romance, in the I can't live without her. And when you say that often enough, you literally can't live without her. So when she leaves, you cease to be. And so when guys get to that point of being zeroed out, I'm trying to get to them before then, like to sort of say, hey, look, think about these things before this happens, or in case this happens. I realize you think you have the best wife in the world. I realize that you think you have a quality woman. Okay. But think about these things. Understand this, so that when it happens, you're not going to put a gun in your mouth. Right.
Yeah. I almost forgot that people actually comment on these things.
Yeah. I know. I haven't even been looking at it. Usually when I'm doing this, I'm the one that's hosting, so I'm looking at it as it goes.
Yeah, so the role.
Yeah, you can ask some of these. That's fine.
It's really just guys that are quoting you here.
Mm-hmm.
So there's really there's no questions here.
The opposite of love is indifference. Yes, that's the opposite. And then this is not my quote. The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of true, because what that shows you, I think, is that if a woman hates you, at least you've left her with some sort of emotional impact. Whereas if you're not, and you're not even on her mind, makes a difference. What else is on here?
Let's see.
See, here's your chance. You can ask a question. Yeah. Yeah, people. Yeah, that was another one. Rule 0 dash. Never root through garbage. Never go back. Yeah, a lot of guys will. When I'm talking to them, they will always want to like reconstruct things. They always want to put things back together. Like, well, how do I get my girlfriend back? And my question to them is, do you really want to have your girlfriend back? Do you really want that? Because anything that I don't think I've ever explained this is the reason I put that as one of the rules is to never root through garbage is because too many guys will reconstruct their relationship. They'll find a way to get back into it, or they think that they're sort of reconnecting and everything's put back together again. But the thing is that whatever it was that broke you up in the first place is still there. And so even if you get married and you live to be 90 years old, there was that one time where you guys split up. And what was this, Rollo? Should I care or not care about the guys in relationships with the women I hook up? I don't know. I think that there's a couple of different ways to think about that, because I think guys will get really Machiavellian and they'll go, well, if the guy's not, laying the pipe the way he should, then, he gets what he gets. He won't learn unless I do. That's really kind of almost like a psychopathic way of thinking about it. But understand that when a woman has sex with you and she has a boyfriend, I've talked about this with John from Modern Life Dating before. When she has a boyfriend, is there some sort of bro code? I think I talked about this when I was on Red.
Yeah, you did.
The bro code, right? Should you? And that's funny. Did you ever see that picture of the toilet seat where the guy like taped the note to the bottom of the toilet seat for the boyfriend to find out, because that only the guy would lift up the toilet seat, and it said something like, "Bro, sorry, I didn't know that she was your girlfriend until this morning when she finally told me, and just thought you should know." I thought that was. And so there's the bro code, right? Well, at least I guess you can live with a healthy, clean conscience. Let's see, in my past, I think I've probably had sex with probably at least 4 or 5 girls who had boyfriends. In a few of those cases, I didn't know, but then in some cases I did know. So another interesting celebrity death was Phil Hartman. Yeah. Didn't Phil Hartman have like a porn star wife, I think? Told his wife he was done and wanted a divorce, so she shot him in his sleep that night. Her opportunistic nature saw that she was going to lose out. That's a really good topic. I think guys, there's this I think unspoken understanding that guys always get the short end of the stick when it comes to divorce. And for the most part, that's true, because the divorce industry really puts guys by and large, puts men through the ringer. If you haven't watched the documentary called Divorce Incorporated, I suggest you do. I think you can get it off of YouTube or off of Netflix, and that is actually getting a little bit older. I think that was from like 2013 or 2012, and it was Dr. Drew from Loveline, and Dr. Drew and Adam Carolla. He was the narrator of that, and I think he helped produce that.
Dr. Smith reminds me of him quite a bit.
Yeah. You have to. Yeah, I think Dr. Smith could be the Dr. Drew of the Manosphere. I like Sean, I really do. I think he's still clinging to some of his blue pill ideals a little bit too much. But
I saw the last one. He got a little perturbed with Rich when he was talking about what the hell was it? The terminology of something.
Oh, spinning plates. He doesn't like the term spinning plates because I think he thinks it's too impersonal. And that's the reason why it's meant to be impersonal.
He didn't like the term self-deprecating. Like, you can't do that. He a little umbrage to what, Rich was saying, like, oh, you should never do that, under any circumstance. And he kind of, I know what he was talking about. He was talking about in the guise of just telling a joke, a witty joke.
Right.
He was talking in terms of making yourself the butt of the joke.
Right. Well, when I talk about, and that's that's one of my iron rule. Actually, I think it's iron rule number 9 is never self-deprecate. Never, a lack of apologizing for a lack of game is not itself game. So a lot of guys will take that tact. They will think that if they cop to being a goof or a dork or whatever, that will in some way make them more endearing.
Mm.
And the problem is when you do, it's like, I'm never going to say, don't take yourself seriously kind of thing. Of course you're going to, you got to laugh at yourself. You have to have that capacity to laugh at yourself and know when you goofed. Okay. Got it. Understand that. But remember when I talk about mental point of origin and I say, when a decision comes along or when some sort of change happens in your environment, your life, whatever, your first thought needs to be yourself, not how is this going to affect my wife? How is this going to affect my family? How is this going to affect my mom? How is this going to affect, anybody in the world except for me? Most guys have been taught from a very early age never to put themselves first, always to put others first. We say that in religion, right? You always have to put others first, do unto others kind of thing, right? And I think that in a way that mentality sort of removes us from some very important self-concern. And part of that self-concern is this, or of not putting yourself first, of not being self-important, is self-deprecating. It's the constant self-deprecation. And even when it's just casual and you think, oh, what's the big deal? People hit me up all the time. What's the big deal, Rollo? That's who cares? He's just it's just a joke. Can't you take a joke? What's a joke? And it's like, okay, fine. But when you're doing that, when the joke is repeated over and over and over again, then it starts to become part of who you are. Right. It becomes like you become the joke. It's not that you shouldn't be able to laugh at yourself. You should. It's that the reason that it's funny when you laugh at yourself is because your predominant personality is you take yourself seriously and you take yourself as being the most important person in your life. And I think that guys who self-deprecate, particularly with respect to their wives, they do so because they think that it's going to be endearing. They think that if they make themselves less, then they'll make their wives more. Like, I can't believe she would go out with a dork like me, or God only knows why this wonderful woman still puts up with me. Well, what does that? First of all, what does it say about you? And then what does it say about her? But guys just do it, just sort of subconsciously, just knee jerk. They're just like, they don't even realize. Most of them don't even realize that they're doing it. And that's why that's why I kind of made that a rule, because too many guys I was dealing with that was what they would default to. And they would think that if they did that in some way would make people like them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, like you said, you're making yourself the butt of the joke,
Mm-hmm.
So
eventually, well, you believe it.
Right. Yeah.
It's not even like the severity of the joke or the severity of your deprecation. It's the consistency of it. It's being persistently deprecating of yourself. And not like you're down on yourself. Like most people, unless you're like really seriously depressed, they don't beat themselves up over things too much, but they will repeat that joke. They will repeat the same, oh, I can't believe she went out with a guy like me. Oh, I can't believe, thank you very much for being here tonight. I can't believe you'd come out and see a joke like me. Don't say, because you get in the habit. What is it? Aristotle, says something. We are our habits. We become our habits. Well, you do it often enough. That's what people are going to think of you. Right. And when you first introduce yourself to people and not even just chicks. I mean, you just introduce yourself to anybody. The way you present yourself is going to be a result of the habits that you have with yourself. So,
yeah, a lot of times when you're on a job interview, when you're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, they tell you to, shoulders back, chest out. You have to present yourself in such a way, and most of people have to be reminded to do something like, well, why don't you just do that naturally? Why don't you naturally walk, erect? Why don't you naturally, walk with your head held high? Well, because you have a habit of not doing that. Why? Because you kept doing it over and over.
You don't have a spine.
Yeah. Well, I think when when I see these basic ideas put forth by like a guy like Jordan Peterson, or make your bed, stick your chest out, show some like this old school stuff like my grandfather might have told me, that today is like revolutionary. Why? Well, because we don't take ourselves seriously, because we're constantly deprecating ourselves, because we think that that's going to make people like us. No, it's not.
Yeah, look people in the eye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a tough one. When I was first getting involved at So Suave, we had this thing called the DJ Bible, and the DJ was for Don Juan because we didn't have any other term for alpha or whatever. And it's still around too. I think you can probably still go to So Suave and find the link to it, but it was sort of a rule book for how to change your life, how to go from being, a beta schmuck to being, somebody who can actually interact and talk with girls. And that, just the basic stuff in there, it seems like it's so revolutionary, and it's not really revolutionary. It's just stuff that you should be able to do as a human being as it is. And eye contact is one of those things too. It's like, I think one of the exercises was if you go to school or whatever, you're in college or whatever, to make eye contact with the people that you walk by when you're going to class. And I mean, not be creepy, oh my God, but to make eye contact, or to smile at, or to smile at, whoever, 10 people a day, right? And not to be like, but casual, hey, how you doing? Or introduce yourself. Just basic things that you should be able to do. And I think it's kind of tragic because I think the younger generation, like certainly millennials, have a really like we were saying before, that adolescent social skill set, because it's stunted. They don't really have occasion to interact face to face, and they don't thus learn how to read or interpret subcommunications.
Where's this guy? Some guy started saying
yeah, I'm sorry, but what's interesting is I've seen I think it was a commercial or something, or maybe there's this sort of campaign to teach women never to start a sentence with "I'm sorry." And what I find is like, I can't, maybe women do that, but not in my experience. It's mostly been guys who will do that. It's not women who will have to apologize for interrupting a conversation. I mean, that's just courtesy. That's what you do when you want to interrupt somebody. You have to at least excuse yourself for interrupting a conversation. But yeah, I find most guys will say stuff like that, or that's a habit that they have, and they don't either take themselves
saying, "Will you stop talking?"
Yeah. Well, you have to. I think, and you probably are. You're probably familiar with this. Is that I believe, I'm a strong believer, firm believer in enlightened self-interest, and that means I have to care about myself before I can care about anybody else. Or I am not, I can only I can't help others until I can help myself, or I can't help others as well as when I help myself first. And that in some cases sounds like selfishness, or like, oh, you're dark triad, or you're a selfish prick, whatever. And it's like, no, it's a difference. It's you wanting to be your best so that eventually you can help people. And then you also have the wisdom to decide who is worth helping and who is not worth helping. Well, everybody should be worth helping, man. No, really no. And not because you're a dick, but because that you don't want to be dragged down with them as well in some cases. So.
Not everybody can be saved.
Yeah, like I said, the unplugging guys from the Matrix is dirty work. It's thankless work, and it's like triage. You have to save the people you can and read Last Rites to the Dying, because there's so many people, so many guys that need that help. Right. And I and I should probably say this right now, because like when I have guys hit me up and they'll email me and say, Rollo, I need help with this. I need help. That's like, I'm not trying to be a prick. and like not get back to you immediately right after. And I know that it's very important to you to get help from me. And okay, that if I can, I will. But I'm only one dude. I'm only one man. So when I said, Red Pill is open source,
Right.
that's why, because I think more people need to be able to help other people as well, particularly guys, because we don't have the collectivist nature that women do. We're more independent. I mean, it's not that we're not team players. We can be, but we are not naturally as collectivist as women are.
Right. And I'll tell those people, don't feel bad, because Rich doesn't even respond to me.
Oh, so, really? Yeah.
At least you do.
Well, like, unless I know, I hate it when we get super chats, because I feel like I have to stop the conversation and address the super chat like immediately. And I have learned that the only way to keep a show going is to wait till the end of the show, because the show that I'm doing, particularly with Pat Campbell, it's not a helpline. I'm not doing it as a Q&A. I'll do those, but that's not what that show's for. So if I save your call till the end of the show, it's because I want to keep the continuity of the show going. So it's not like you didn't answer my super chat. Well, email it to me. I'll answer it to you.
I guess you helped this guy Carl out.
So
thank you from him.
Thank you, Carl. If anybody in the chat here, if anybody's watching this, if I've done something good for you, thank you. I'm very much that's why I'm here to help. I at least want to help people. If you want to show any kind of appreciation, I'm not going to say, go donate to my Patreon or something like that. But the best way you can help me is actually going to Amazon and giving me a good review on Amazon. It won't cost you a dime.
Now, you don't want to buy your book there, though, right? Don't you want to buy it through your website?
For the Audible book, I would rather they buy it through my affiliate links, which are on my website. For the audiobook, you can buy the print or the Kindle book through Amazon, but the affiliate link is important to me, because Amazon really kind of screwed its mid to high earning authors by removing what's called the bounty program. And when you go to Audible, you can get a free book if you subscribe right then and there. You just have to sign up for 6 months or something like that for Audible. And when people do that and they choose my book as their first book, then I used to get $50. It was great. And so when you're making like $50 and you're only selling like 12 books a month or something, that's, it's great. It's like gravy money, man. We'll go to Taco Bell, whatever. But when you are selling books in the volume that, like, say somebody like Robert Greene is, those bounties add up to a lot of money. And so what they did was they didn't remove that. They just made it so you can still have the bounties. In fact, you make more money now. You make 75, but they have to go through the affiliate link that Audible now gives its authors for you to get that. So in that way, they've effectively killed the bounty program. And what happens is now the low earning authors don't really care about it, but the higher earning authors do, because now we have to market ourselves against Amazon. Because if I go on here or I go on Pat's show and I go, my Audible, I'm also available on Audible, and people go to Audible and they sign up and they get a free book, and they just did it because I said that, I'm actually marketing against myself without giving them the affiliate link. And so I am actually doing the marketing for Amazon to compete against me. Like how that works. Yeah. I think it's the most messed up thing that Audible has done, but it's their business. They do what they want to. I think that'll probably change once Google gets into the digital publishing business, and that's what they're planning to do. Right now, Amazon owns about 87% of digital publishing market right now. And that's kind of a dangerous thing, I think.
Wow.
Because it's effectively a monopoly, and it's a monopoly that is based in information and communication. So if they want to like erase Roosh's books, they can just delete all his books and refuse to ever print his books ever again.
Wow.
And that's kind of scary thought. Like they can, it's Fahrenheit 451 or whatever, you know, it's like, it's digital book burning is what it is. Yeah. So they can, if that, you know, some purple haired, you know, feminist at the quality control in Amazon says, I don't like that Rollo Tomassi, delete, you know. Yeah, that's a big deal. It's a big deal for a lot of guys. I mean, I don't do this for a living. I'd be all right if that happened, but I don't want it to happen. I don't want it to happen because I don't want guys not to have access to the stuff that I'm doing. I could go sell my own books if I wanted to, but I wouldn't be able to do it as effectively without them. And so I'm very appreciative and very I try to stay in as good standing with Amazon as I possibly can, because I mean, I do like them. I like what they do. It's the only time in history that I could actually be a published author is now. Because before self-publishing, you know, imagine me trying to take my the Rollo Tomassi, the Rational Mail, to a Random House or Penguin or, you know, whatever.
Simon and Schuster.
Hey, yeah, exactly. Simon and Schuster. Yeah, exactly. You think Milo Yiannopoulos had a tough time with the traditional publisher. Yeah, so this is the only way I could possibly do this and disseminate my work. So it's in ways it's kind of scary, and that's another reason why I don't ever want to depend on this for my revenue. Men need to hear what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. And you and I were talking about this when we were offline a little bit here, is I don't ever want to get to the point where I'm dependent on this for anything, because it can, in a moment, it can be all whipped away. Right. And whether that's YouTube or that's Amazon or even WordPress, as we've seen Heartiste lately get deleted as well. And especially, we're in a gender war, man. We're in an ideological gender war. It's a Cold War, but it's a war of ideologies, and part of that is gender, and that's a big deal to people. A big deal to a certain element. It's a big deal to the people who have their finger over the backspace button, over the delete button, right? It's a big deal to them. And so, like, people will ask me all the time, they will say, do you think that the pendulum will swing? Or do you think that Google will ever, you know, go bankrupt or crumble or whatever? And I'm like, I don't see that ever happening, but it's not, that's the thing is it's not the company itself. It's not Amazon itself. It's not WordPress or YouTube or whatever. It's not the company itself. It's the ideology that's invested into the company. Like Twitter, for example, like Tim Pool goes on Joe Rogan and he goes on there with Jack Dorsey and that other chick from Twitter. And they literally say, yes, we have a bias against conservatives. They say that, openly say that. And you know, what gets me is that I still see Tim Pool say something like, he'll ask these rhetorical questions about, like, is there, you know, why is it that Twitter is doing this? Well, you know, because they told you that they have a bias against people who think in a certain way. So don't ask those stupid questions anymore. Ask what you're going to do about those questions, instead of like, is this really happening? Yes, it's really happening. You got to hear it is black and white. That's they told you that.
Yeah, you play the soundbite back if you want.
Yeah, exactly. And so you know this stuff. You know that like Twitter, people keep saying, well, Twitter's going down, you know, Gab's making inroads. And well, yeah, of course it's making inroads. You know why? Because Gab is, as a company, as a technology, Gab is no more advanced than Twitter is. In fact, if anything, Gab knows how to promote and market themselves better. But the difference between Gab and Twitter is ideology. It's the thought process of the people who are in control of those technologies. That's where you have to work. That's what you have to work on. And in Google and in WordPress and all of these, big tech is owned by a very liberal, leftist, social justice ideology. Well, if you want, those companies aren't going to go anywhere, but you can change the ideology, and it changes, and you can see it happen. I remember when George Bush was president, and thinking you couldn't say anything bad about George Bush because people were that really super conservative, and they would like try to fight you if you said anything bad about him. And I thought he was one of the worst presidents we've ever had, but God forbid you even say something like that, because the country was so conservative leaning. Right, and now we're the opposite. It seems like we're the opposite anyways.
Or did that, I think a lot of people pumped up at that point, where it's funny because now I think it's totally the opposite.
Yeah. Well, I can remember when they were burning Dixie Chicks records because they said something bad about George Bush.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh my God, why? I can't believe it. And I used to think the conservative side of things was going to be where totalitarianism came from. And no, not at all. In fact, it seems very much the opposite right now. I think I don't want to get all into politics or anything here, but like I was very much much more centrist back then. I was much more I don't want to say liberal, but I was more like Tim Pool always says I'm a classical liberal. Well, no, you're probably by today's standards you're probably very much conservative, because even just being a classic liberal or being a centrist today is enough to put you in one camp. We're very, very polarized these days. Oh, yeah. Tim Pool's talked about that as well. And the one thing he always avoids is like he'll talk about like the ideological divide in the country right now, but I think that he needs to also cover the gender divide in the country as well, because as a result of that, we're segregating ourselves from there's going to be, and I hate to think in terms of this kind of separation or this segregation, but I think that because we become so polarized ideologically right now, we're going to start seeing, or already are really seeing, people sort of only deal with one kind of person. Like like this restaurant only caters to conservatives. This restaurant only caters to liberals. This tech company Twitter is only for liberals. This tech company Gab is all about free speech, but if you're conservative, you're not going to go there. So this is going to be your little area right now. And so there's these little red areas and these little blue areas, and they're divided by whatever those interests are. So it'll get to a point.
Like race anymore. It's not like racial.
It's not so much race as it is ideological stripe now. And so I think what you're going to see is you will see certain businesses will only lean towards hiring like people with a liberal mindset, your ideological mindset, and others will hire conservative mindsets, or you'll have that division right there. And that division will also cross into gender lines. So if you want to work at this company, you have to take this ideological purity test, which is you have to treat women like this, and you believe all women, and you have to believe in enthusiastic consent. And there's this laundry list of things that are associated with just that ideology. Whereas like and this will happen on the opposite side too. So you have traditional conservatives, you got tradcons who are going to say, well, if you want to work for us or you want to be in our group, you have to man up and marry these sluts, right? You have to treat women in this way. And so you're going to see that kind of segregation. We're already kind of seeing it right now, because like when Me Too started happening, like even Sheryl Sandberg just recently was saying something to the effect that men and women are segregating themselves in the workplace because they say men are afraid to work with women. No, they're not afraid. They're cautious. They don't want to in any way have any misconceptions or any deliberate or otherwise to ruin their lives, because that's where we're at right now. So if I did something at that company, or if the woman says I did something and she spreads it all over social media, it doesn't matter whether I'm completely exonerated from all of this. It's whatever. Yeah, we don't have a court of law anymore. We have a court of social justice, or a court of social media right now.
Yep.
So.
Well, It is. Wow. It's almost 10.
Yeah, we went a little bit over. That's
You
okay.
did?
I've got to go walk my dog. So
I
it's
know.
okay. I gotta get some
Say,
light, so.
probably
Mhm.
crying
What's been-
over your lap.
Yeah, well, she's just laying right here right now. People don't know. I recondition racing greyhounds, and I've got a young one right here right now. That's a good thing about having this new studio is the dogs can come in and out, but then they start whining.
All right. Well, I want to again say thank you so much for your
Sure.
time. Again, it was a pleasure to have you on.
Anytime, Chris. And I want to say, hey, thank you for being so active in the chat and sort of, in investing yourself in Rule Zero and the stuff that I do and the stuff Ryan does and the stuff the other guys do as well.
I do, and I think
you're always there. And I think we made you a mod too, didn't we? I think we made somebody made you a mod. Yeah, I'm pretty sure somebody made you a mod. So anyways, and Franklin, it's been nice to meet you too as well.
Nice to have met you. I'm glad to have you. I'm glad to have you here tonight. I learned a lot.
Sure.
Right.
So thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, again, I want to say thank you again to Rollo Tomassi. That was great. Franklin, I mean, we went well over, an hour and a half there. I didn't cover the amount that we covered, but geez, that was a lot.
There's a lot of information. I hung on every word.
No, he's and again, he's not lying when, he's been around, doing this for such a long time. And again, it is the truth. He was one of the original guys on that So Suave forum. And, he's brought it from there all the way up to now where he's had the 3 books. I didn't even get a chance to ask him about the 4th book. I know that he's in the process of doing that. I think he's in the process of proofreading it. And It's going to be the red pill theory within the context of religion. And he's actually going to have a whole bunch of people where, different denominations, Catholics, Hindus, Muslims even, and they're going to give them their take on, what relationships are and what marriages are in the context of things.
Gee, one of my favorite topics.
So it's actually going to be really, really a great read. So definitely get to his site, which is therationalmale.com. You can locate his books, his writings. So you definitely want to do that. You were a little quiet.
I was. Well, you know what it is? If I've learned one thing, if there's somebody that's smarter than me, I'm going to keep quiet and I'm going to listen to them. So that way, eventually, one of these days, I'll be that smart. I would have learned as much as what he had to give out. And I was taking notes here and things like that, things to poke around.
Thomas says, have you guys read his book? Yes, I have. As I said before, I read the first 3, which is the first Rational Male, Positive Masculinity, was the second book, and again that fourth book is going to be great. So I can't wait for that. So how many of his books?
Sadly, I've only read the first book and about halfway through the second, actually.
Right. And Tom follows up with, how have his books actually affected you guys? Well, I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't be here now doing this. And again, my brand and our brand of doing things is a little bit more loosey-goosey, a lot more, kind of, red lens humor. That's what I like to kind of characterize it as. But again, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for his work and for the lessons I took from it. And it was funny. I was thinking about that today, Franklin.
What's that?
It was, I think it was something in the way I felt about it was, I read his stuff and the stuff that he put in his books there, especially the first one. The first one, for any of you guys out there that are watching this feed or are going to watch this feed, start with that first book, because that has all the principles and the tenements in there. That's a tremendous place to start. And I have to say, like, it was like a cold splash of water on me in terms of looking and actually reflecting back on, 10, 15 years of my life in terms
Like
of,
a wake up.
yeah. And how I went about dating and thinking about things. And it was just, it all kind of came into focus. And, it's not, I'm not stroking anybody by saying guys like Richard Cooper. I actually, truth be told, I actually found his stuff before I found Rollo. So I found Rollo through him, and he's tremendous too. And he's very, he's very no nonsense.
Straight to the point.
Guys like that. He's no nonsense. Donovan Sharp is very no nonsense. But I mean, you need that. Those guys will tell you exactly how it is, and it is the truth. You may not like what they have to say, and I hope one day to have both those gentlemen on. I think again, like you, I didn't want to get too kind of yuck, and kind of do stuff.
I'm glad we did things the way it was done.
Yeah, I think that was good. So, let's see. To Tom. Geez, Tom's sharing a lot here. 2 marriages and several LTRs, and it's all yeah. I agree with him. So, but that was tremendous. I mean, I think at the high point it was like something like 25 people watching, and countless numbers were here in the chat. I didn't even know about the chat. This goes.
You look at the analytics later.
Yeah, I know. So, but no, it was tremendous, and I'm looking forward to some of the other guests we have lined up, and that should be great. So, I guess we'll we got to go with our sponsorship right now. As always, this show is brought to you by the Tactical Soap Company. That's the Grondike Tactical Soap Company. Natural Fear Moon infused soap. If you want to be a better man and get clean, you want to get yourself over to the tacticalsoap.com and put in the coupon code Von Erik for a very nice discount. And you're going to be showering, so you might as well shower with some benefit.
Pheromone infused soap.
Yeah, I always, it's got to be my New York accent because I always trip over that. So
it's not a word you use every day, is it? Well, it's not a word you use every day, so.
But yeah. What would again? Since you were so quiet and you observe, what were your observations?
Well, I'll tell you something. There's a lot of things that I thought that I was doing right, and I realized that there were a lot of things that I was doing wrong. The big thing was, and I didn't want to admit this, but the big thing was about when he was saying, when you're acting the buffoon. Gee, I'm surprised that you even went out with me, type of a thing. When he was bringing that forward, I didn't want to jump in and say, yeah, I've been like that, and now I realize, what is that saying about her, and more importantly, what's that saying about me when I come out with something silly like that?
Right.
That was the big thing. That was the really big thing. And I don't know if you saw me, I was sort of kind of fidgeting, and I was like, oh, geez, and that was really the big thing. That's the most that I took away from the whole, from his speech. And that's exactly what it was. It was learning speech to me. And that's exactly what it was, because I've done that. And when he was saying that, I was like, I've done that. I've actually done that. And then I think to myself, what an idiot. Why am I any less than another person? Type of a thing. And that sort of, it hit home, and it made me.
And Carl Bennington over here chimes in. When did you guys first unplug? Well, I'll tell you, the first, it actually about 2 years ago when I started to watch a lot of the stuff that Rollo and some of the other guys were doing online. And then again, when I got a hold of his book, it was that cold splash of water, and I've never been the same. And it gave birth to what we're doing now. So I'm looking forward to where this train goes. So
Audible's been my friend. Audible's you turned me on to Audible, and I've never turned off.
Yeah, no, Audible is great. It's a great service. They have hundreds of thousands of stuff, the books, and I can't even keep up with it because you get like 2 or 3 free ones every month, and it's a great service.
I've learned a lot. Although I had a little problem getting some of the podcasts to come down properly, but for the most part, I was able to get it to work. And like I said, his book, I mean, I'm not reading it, but it's there for the listening.
Yeah.
And during the day, I'm in the vehicle a lot, and I've learned a lot. Yeah,
and actually, what's funny is the guy that narrates his books, this guy Sam Boda, who actually follows us on Twitter. He actually he's basically obviously a voice guy,
right?
And he actually went through some really bad medical problems and things like that, and he's bad. He's better, thank God.
I think I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, he's actually gotten a lot better, and he still has to do some things, but he's he's really a great guy, and he's the narrator of those books, and he does it great, and I think he's doing the 4th book, which is the religion book. So, and as you guys can see here, we have the Twitter and Facebook links up. You can always follow the show on Twitter at Von Erik, and also like us on Facebook with facebook.com/Cris Von Erik. So please do that. We didn't take too many calls because, again, when we do these one-on-one kind of interviews, we want to just let that individual kind of give their expertise, because they have so much to say. So we kind of thought better of that. I'm not saying that you can't call in, but it is getting to be the witching hour, so we're probably not going to do that. We kind of pushed off all our other segments. We had some other stuff planned for tonight, but we'll have to get to that next week. And again, you can always get and see us here on our YouTube channel Thursdays at 9 p.m. unless otherwise specified. If we're going on earlier, we'll definitely let you know that. But feel free to follow us, hit the like button. You better be hitting the like button on this episode, and subscribe.
Smash the button.
Obliterate it. But Franklin, I want to say thank you once again to you.
As always, Cris, it's good to be here, and tonight was actually pretty special. I'm glad I was here.
Yes, it was great. And to all of you out there, I want to say thank you, good night, and God bless.